They had the voices, the money, the fame, the records that made millions of people fall in love. But behind some of R&B's most unforgettable voices was a battle that fame couldn't fix. Some fought heroin, others battled cocaine, alcohol, or prescription drugs. And for a few of them, the addiction became so powerful that it nearly destroyed everything they had built. But here's what makes these stories so heartbreaking. Some of these legends actually escaped. Others didn't. And one of the greatest voices on this list went from selling millions of records to sleeping on the streets of Los Angeles. So today, we're going behind the music to uncover the stories that happened when the spotlight disappeared. Because these aren't just stories about addiction. They're stories about fame, pain, survival, and the price some legends paid for being human. When he made you cry. You're watching R&B Timers, where we uncover the music, the memories, and the untold stories behind classic R&B. Like, subscribe, and comment on the stories that shock you the most. Let's begin. Number 10. Gerald Levert. Gerald Levert had R&B running through his blood. His father, Eddie Levert, was the legendary lead singer of the OJs. But Gerald didn't simply inherit a famous last name. He built his own legacy. With his brothers Sean and Mark Gordon, he formed Levert, creating hits such as Casanova and Baby I'm Ready. Later, Gerald became part of LSG alongside Keith Sweat and Johnny Gill. To fans, he was the powerful voice of romantic R&B. But behind that voice was another story. Gerald lived with chronic pain following injuries and surgery, and prescription medication eventually became part of his life. On November 10, 2006, Gerald Levert was found dead at his home in Cleveland. He was only 40. At first, reports suggested a heart attack, but the autopsy revealed something far more complicated. His death was ruled an accidental acute intoxication involving prescription narcotics and over-the-counter medications, including Vicodin, Percocet, Darvocet, Xanax, and antihistamines. His family said the medications had been prescribed for legitimate medical problems, including chronic pain. And that's what makes Gerald's story different. This wasn't simply a story about a superstar destroying his career. It was a reminder that prescription medication can become dangerous, even when the story begins inside a doctor's office. Gerald Levert left behind music that still resonates with R&B fans. But his death left another question behind. How many people knew how much pain he was actually carrying? And our next story goes back to an era when soul music was changing America. Number 9. Sam Moore. Before there was modern R&B, there was Sam and Dave. Sam Moore's voice was explosive. Together with Dave Prater, he helped create some of the most powerful soul records of the 1960s, including Soul Man, Hold On, I'm Comin', and I Thank You. But after the duo broke apart, Sam Moore's life took a devastating turn. He later described falling into a long period of heroin and cocaine addiction. The addiction became so severe that, according to the Los Angeles Times, after 12 years of addiction, he had dropped to around 118 pounds and described losing his hair and teeth. Think about that for a moment. This was the same man whose voice had once electrified packed concert halls. Now he was fighting simply to survive. But this story doesn't end there. In the early 1980s, Moore married Joyce McCrae. She became not only his wife, but also an important force in helping him overcome his heroin addiction and rebuild his life. And eventually, Sam Moore returned to performing. The voice survived. The career survived. Most importantly, he survived. That's an important distinction. Because addiction doesn't always end with a tragedy. Sometimes the comeback becomes the most powerful part of the story. But our next artist had a different kind of comeback. She had already lived through one of the darkest periods imaginable. Number 8. Etta James.
How in the world do you expect anybody to?
Etta James didn't sing songs. She lived inside them.
If you don't respect yourself.
At last, Tell Mama, I'd Rather Go Blind. Her voice carried blues, gospel, R&B, jazz, and rock and roll all at once. But behind that extraordinary voice was a decades-long battle with addiction. By the mid-1960s, James was addicted to heroin. Her addiction became so destructive that she admitted to writing bad checks, forging prescriptions, and stealing from friends to finance her habit. She was arrested for writing bad checks in 1966 and later spent time in jail after violating probation. In 1973, she was arrested for heroin possession. Instead of prison, she was ordered into treatment. But treatment itself didn't instantly solve the problem.
Walk like somebody.
James became dependent on methadone and continued struggling with heroin. She eventually spent 17 months at Tarzana Psychiatric Hospital.
Respect yourself.
In her autobiography, Rage to Survive, she described that period as life-changing. But even after treatment, the battle wasn't simply over. That's the part people often don't understand about addiction. Recovery isn't always one dramatic moment where everything suddenly becomes perfect. Sometimes it's years of falling, getting back up, and trying again.
If you disrespect everybody.
James later dealt with dependency on painkillers as well. Yet through all of it, she continued performing and recording. The darkness never erased the voice. It became part of the complicated story behind it. And if you think Etta James's story was difficult, wait until you hear what happened to the next artist. Number 7. Bobby DeBarge. Bobby DeBarge had one of the most recognizable falsettos in R&B. As the lead singer of Switch, he helped create the sophisticated sound that would influence an entire generation, and his musical family would eventually produce the group DeBarge. But Bobby's personal battle began long before his final years. His heroin addiction started in the early 1970s. Later, cocaine and crack cocaine became part of the struggle. And eventually, his addiction had consequences that went far beyond the recording studio. In 1988, Bobby DeBarge was sentenced to 5 years in a Wisconsin prison on drug trafficking charges. After his release in 1993, he attempted to rebuild his career. He recorded again. He tried to move forward, and his album It's Not Over carried a title that sounded almost like a declaration. Because he still believed there was something left to save, but his health was deteriorating. Bobby DeBarge died in 1995 at only 39 years old after complications related to AIDS. His story is painful because you can see the comeback beginning and then watch time run out. But the next story is different. This artist didn't simply survive addiction. He went from one of R&B's biggest stars to homelessness. Before we continue, if these stories are giving you a different perspective on the legends behind the music, take a second to subscribe to R&B Timers. We don't just talk about the hits. We dig into the stories behind them. And tell me in the comments, which artist's story has surprised you the most so far? Now let's get back to the countdown. Number 6, Natalie Cole.
I know in my heart you'd fall.
Natalie Cole had an enormous name to live up to. She was the daughter of Nat King Cole. But when she stepped onto the music scene, she proved she wasn't simply living off her father's legacy. Her debut album, Inseparable, produced the hit This Will Be an Everlasting Love. She became a star in her own right. Then the story changed. By the early 1980s, Natalie Cole was struggling with serious drug addiction. In later interviews, she openly described how destructive that period had become. She was using heroin and crack cocaine. Her career was falling apart. Her marriage was collapsing. And she reached a point where getting high mattered more than making music. In a 1991 interview with the Los Angeles Times, Cole described herself during that period as physically and emotionally devastated, and said that her first rehabilitation attempt in 1982 failed. She credited a stronger treatment program in 1983 with helping her turn her life around.
All that you are.
And then something remarkable happened. She came back. Natalie rebuilt her career and eventually achieved one of the most impressive second acts in R&B and pop. The woman who had once been consumed by addiction was back on television stages, back in recording studios, and back in front of audiences. Her story wasn't about pretending the past never happened. It was about refusing to let the past become the ending. And that's why Natalie Cole belongs on this list. Not simply because of how far she fell, but because of how far she climbed back. Number 5, Donny Hathaway.
Put your hand in the hand of a man.
There are singers who can perform a song, and then there are singers who make you feel like they're revealing something from inside their soul. Donny Hathaway was one of those singers. A Song for You, The Ghetto, This Christmas. His voice could sound beautiful and wounded at the same time. But Hathaway's story is one of the most complicated in R&B history because his struggle involved serious mental health problems alongside substance-related issues. As his career progressed, his behavior became increasingly unpredictable. Friends and colleagues watched a brilliant musician struggle with problems that were difficult to understand and even harder to control. In January 1979, Hathaway died after falling from the window of the Essex House Hotel in New York. He was only 33. His death was ruled a suicide. But even today, the details surrounding his final years are discussed carefully because Hathaway's mental health struggles were so profound. And here's the tragedy. His music was filled with warmth. His voice made people feel understood, but behind the microphone, he was fighting battles that his audience could never fully see. Donny Hathaway's story reminds us that addiction and mental illness cannot simply be reduced to a headline. Sometimes the real tragedy is realizing how much pain a person was carrying while still giving the world beauty. And we're now entering the final four. Putting your hand in the hand of a man. The next artist's story would involve one of the most shocking transformations in R&B history. Number 4. Charlie Wilson. Before he became Uncle Charlie, Charlie Wilson was the powerhouse voice of the Gap Band. The Gap Band helped define the sound of funk and R&B in the late 1970s and 1980s. But when the group's career entered a difficult period in the late 1980s, Wilson's personal life began collapsing. Business problems, financial pressure, drugs, alcohol, and eventually, homelessness. By the early 1990s, Wilson was living on the streets of Los Angeles. He has described sleeping around Hollywood Boulevard and hiding during the day because he didn't want people to recognize him. At one point, he weighed roughly 130 pounds. Think about the irony. The man who had performed in front of enormous crowds was now trying not to be seen. The celebrity wanted to disappear, and then came the person who helped change everything. Maheen Tat was working as a social worker when she encountered Wilson during rehabilitation. She became his wife, and Wilson eventually got clean and began rebuilding his career. What happened next almost sounds impossible. The man who had been homeless became a major solo R&B success. He returned to the charts. He collaborated with younger artists. He earned Grammy nominations. And decades after the Gap Band, Charlie Wilson was still filling concert venues. This is why his story is so powerful. The comeback wasn't theoretical. We watched it happen, but now we're down to 3, and the next story belongs to one of the most influential female voices in R&B history. Number 3, Whitney Houston. One of the most recognizable voices in modern music, Whitney Houston didn't simply become famous. She became a global phenomenon. But behind the perfect notes, the awards, the movies, and the sold-out shows was a serious battle with drugs. In her 2009 interview with Oprah Winfrey, Houston spoke openly about cocaine and marijuana use during the difficult years of her marriage to Bobby Brown. She described periods when drug use became an everyday part of her life. The contrast was devastating. On television, audiences saw Whitney Houston the superstar. Behind closed doors, Whitney was fighting addiction. Her career went through years of turbulence. Her voice changed, her public image changed, and her attempts at recovery were not always successful, yet she continued trying to rebuild. In 2011, she entered rehabilitation again as part of a long-running recovery effort. Then came February 11, 2012. Whitney Houston was found unresponsive in a hotel suite. She was 48. Her death was ruled an accidental drowning, with heart disease and cocaine use listed as contributing factors. For millions of fans, the tragedy wasn't simply that Whitney Houston died. It was that one of the most extraordinary voices the world had ever heard had spent years fighting a battle that fame couldn't silence. And we're down to 2. But the number 2 story is almost impossible to understand unless you know what happened before the fame. Number 2, Dave Prater. Alongside Sam Moore, Prater formed Sam and Dave, one of the most explosive duos in R&B history. Their chemistry was unmistakable. Their voices sounded like 2 gospel preachers competing for the same microphone, and the songs they created became immortal. Soul Man, Hold On, I'm Comin', I Thank You, recorded at Stax in Memphis, these songs helped define the sound of Southern soul during the 1960s. But behind the success was a complicated personal relationship, and when Sam and Dave officially split in 1970, Prater's career began moving in a very different direction. His solo career never reached the heights of the duo, and during the years that followed, Prater struggled with drug addiction. Then, in 1987, the problem became a legal crisis. Prater was arrested for selling crack cocaine to an undercover police officer. He pleaded guilty and received probation, a fine, and community service. But there was something important about what happened next. His wife still believed he could overcome the addiction. She reportedly felt that he was beginning to turn his life around. For a man who had once stood beside Sam Moore on some of the biggest stages in soul music, There was still a possibility of another chapter, but he never got the chance to write it. On April 9, 1988, Dave Prater died in a car accident. He was 50 years old.
You better believe what Dave and I tell you tonight. Listen.
His story isn't simply about addiction. It's about a legendary performer whose career had already been transformed by fame, separation, and personal struggles. And now, we arrive at number 1. But this final story isn't simply about addiction. It's about one of the greatest performers who ever lived. A man whose influence can still be heard in Michael Jackson, James Brown, Elvis Presley, and generations of R&B singers who came after him. And his final chapter is one of the most heartbreaking stories in music history. Number 1, Jackie Wilson. The Detroit Historical Society describes him as an electrifying performer whose footwork, knee drops, and splits became part of his legendary stage persona. And his influence was enormous. Before Michael Jackson became the king of pop, before James Brown became the godfather of soul, Jackie Wilson was already showing audiences what a modern black superstar could look like. He had hits like Reet Petite, Lonely Teardrops, Baby Workout, and Higher and Higher. He scored dozens of R&B hits and became one of the defining performers in the transition from rhythm and blues into soul. But behind the excitement was a man whose personal life had become increasingly painful. In 1970, tragedy struck Jackie Wilson's family. His 16-year-old son, Jackie Jr., was shot and killed near the family's Detroit home. The loss devastated him.
My heart is crying, lonely tears.
And according to historical accounts, Wilson became deeply depressed and increasingly turned to alcohol and drugs to cope with the grief. This is where the story changes.
Just give.
The man who had once seemed almost invincible on stage was struggling away from it.
Just say you will. Say you.
His career was no longer at the height it had been during the 1950s and 1960s. Financial problems followed. His personal life became increasingly complicated, and the combination of grief, alcohol, and drug abuse took a heavy toll. Yet Wilson kept performing, because performing was what Jackie Wilson knew how to do. Then came that night in 1975. He walked onto the stage. The lights came up. The band started. And Jackie Wilson began singing the song that had made him famous, Lonely Teardrops. Then, during the performance, he suddenly collapsed. At first, some people in the audience thought it was part of the act. That's how convincing Jackie Wilson had always been. But this time, it wasn't a performance. Jackie Wilson had suffered a massive heart attack. He was rushed for emergency treatment. The lack of oxygen to his brain caused catastrophic damage, and from that point forward, the life of Jackie Wilson changed forever. For a brief period, there were signs of improvement, but Wilson never returned to the performer audiences remembered. He spent the remaining years of his life severely incapacitated in hospitals and nursing facilities. 8 years passed. 8 years. The man who had once commanded an entire stage could no longer command his own body. And then, on January 21st, 1984, Jackie Wilson died. He was only 49. His official cause of death was pneumonia after years of severe disability following the 1975 heart attack. But here's the part of Jackie Wilson's story that deserves to be remembered. He wasn't simply a troubled singer. He was a pioneer. He helped build the bridge between early rhythm and blues and modern soul. His stagecraft influenced performers who would become legends themselves. And Michael Jackson never forgot what Jackie Wilson had contributed.